Boy dies for 4 minutes. His warning about the future will terrify you, NDE. What is this warning? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. It was an ordinary autumn afternoon in the small town of Willow Creek, the kind of day where the golden leaves blanketed the ground, and the crisp air carried the faint smell of wood smoke from nearby chimneys. 10-year-old Ethan Porter was playing with his friends near the edge of the woods, a place where their imaginations could run wild. For them, it wasn't just a forest, it was a battleground, a kingdom, or even a secret hideout. The boys laughed and shouted, their voices echoing through the trees as they chased each other with makeshift swords crafted from sturdy branches. Ethan had always been the most daring of the group. His blue eyes sparkled with mischief, and his sandy blonde hair stuck out from under his cap as he led his friends deeper into the woods. "Come on, guys. The dragon's lair is just beyond the old creek," he exclaimed, pointing toward the dense thicket. The other boys hesitated for a moment. Everyone in Willow Creek knew the stories about the woods, strange occurrences, whispered legends of people seeing mysterious lights, and a general unease that kept most people from venturing too far. But Ethan was fearless, and his courage always inspired his friends. "All right," his best friend Liam finally said, puffing up his chest. "Let's go." They pushed through the thick underbrush, their boots crunching on twigs and dry leaves. The deeper they went, the quieter it became, as if the forest were holding its breath. Even the chirping of the birds seemed to fade, replaced by an eerie stillness. Despite the growing unease, Ethan pressed on, determined to reach the creek. It happened in an instant. Ethan, who had been leading the group, suddenly tripped over a root and fell. His friends stopped and turned back to help him, but before they could reach him, a bright, piercing light engulfed Ethan. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, blindingly white and impossibly bright, as if a star had descended into the forest. The boys froze, too stunned to move, as the light surrounded Ethan, lifting him slightly off the ground. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the light vanished. Ethan collapsed to the ground, lifeless. Liam was the first to react, rushing to Ethan's side. "Ethan, wake up," he shouted, shaking his friend. But Ethan's body was limp, his face pale. The other boys stood in shocked silence, unsure of what to do. "Call 911. Liam yelled, his voice trembling with panic. One of the boys pulled out his phone and dialed, his hands shaking so badly that it took him 2 tries to press the right buttons. Within minutes, the sound of sirens echoed through the woods. Paramedics arrived, their faces grim as they began CPR. Ethan's mother, Sarah, arrived at the scene shortly after, her face a mask of terror. "What happened?" she demanded, her voice cracking. Liam stammered out the story, but it sounded too unbelievable to make sense. "A bright light? Ethan lifted into the air?" None of it seemed real. The paramedics worked tirelessly, their efforts focused on bringing Ethan back. The defibrillator pads sent shocks through his small body, but there was no response. Minutes passed, each one stretching into an eternity. Sarah fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face as she whispered prayers under her breath. Finally, after 4 agonizing minutes, Ethan gasped. His chest heaved as he took in a deep, shuddering breath. His eyes fluttered open, and for a moment, he looked around as if he didn't recognize anyone. Then, he focused on his mother and reached out to her weakly. "Mom," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Sarah grabbed his hand, relief washing over her. "Ethan, oh, thank God. You're okay," she sobbed, pulling him into her arms. But Ethan wasn't okay. His gaze was distant, his expression haunted. "Mom," he said again, his voice trembling. "I saw something." "What, sweetheart? What did you see?" Sarah asked, brushing his hair back from his forehead. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "The future. I saw the future." The paramedics exchanged uneasy glances but didn't say anything. They loaded Ethan onto a stretcher and rushed him to the hospital, leaving Sarah to follow in her car. On the drive, she couldn't stop thinking about what her son had said. What did he mean by the future? Was he delirious from the trauma? Or was there something more to it? At the hospital, Ethan underwent a battery of tests. The doctors couldn't find any physical explanation for what had happened. His heart had stopped, but there were no signs of a heart attack or any underlying conditions. It was as if he had simply turned off, only to come back to life moments later. As the days passed, Ethan began to recover physically, but his mental state was another story. He was withdrawn, refusing to talk to anyone about what he had experienced. When his parents pressed him, he would only say, "You wouldn't believe me." It wasn't until a week later, during a quiet moment with his mother, that Ethan finally opened up. They were sitting on the porch swing, the cool evening breeze rustling the trees in their backyard. Sarah held his hand, waiting patiently as Ethan gathered the courage to speak. "Mom," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "When I was gone, I wasn't in the forest anymore. I was somewhere else." "Where, sweetheart?" Sarah asked gently. Ethan hesitated, his eyes wide with fear. "I don't know what to call it. It was bright, like the light I saw in the woods. But it wasn't just the light. There were people. Or maybe they weren't people. They looked human, but they were glowing, like they were made of light." Sarah's heart pounded as she listened, but she forced herself to stay calm. "What did they say to you?" "They didn't talk with words," Ethan explained. "It was like they put thoughts in my head. They showed me things, Mom. Things that are going to happen." "What kind of things?" Sarah pressed, her voice shaking. Ethan's face crumpled as tears streamed down his cheeks. "Bad things. Terrible things. Fires, floods, people fighting everywhere. The world was broken. And then they showed me something else. They showed me how it could be fixed." Sarah's grip on Ethan's hand tightened as she absorbed his words. Her motherly instincts screamed to protect him, to tell him it was all just a bad dream, but deep down, she knew that Ethan believed every word he was saying. The look in his eyes, a mix of fear and urgency, was not something a child could fabricate. "What do you mean, fixed?" she asked, her voice trembling. Ethan took a deep breath, his small frame visibly trembling. "They showed me people coming together, not fighting anymore, helping each other. It was like everyone remembered they were on the same team. They said that the future they showed me depends on choices we make now." Sarah was silent, her mind racing. Was this the rambling of a traumatized boy, or had Ethan experienced something beyond comprehension? She couldn't shake the feeling that whatever he'd seen, it had left a deep mark on him. "What do we do, Ethan?" she asked finally. "What did they want us to do?" Ethan looked up at her, his blue eyes filled with tears. "They said I need to tell people. But, Mom, who's going to believe me? I'm just a kid." Sarah pulled him into a tight embrace, her own tears falling freely now. "I believe you, sweetheart. And we'll figure this out together." The next morning, Sarah decided to share Ethan's story with her husband, Mark. As a man of science and reason, Mark was skeptical at first. "Sarah, he's been through a traumatic experience. His brain was starved of oxygen for several minutes. It's not unusual for people to have vivid hallucinations in situations like that." But Sarah wouldn't budge. "It's more than that, Mark. You didn't see the way he looked when he talked about it. He's not making this up. He's terrified." Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. "All right, let's assume for a moment that Ethan's experience was real. What do we do with that information? Are we supposed to go on TV and tell everyone our son had a vision of the future? You know how that's going to sound." "I don't care how it sounds," Sarah snapped. "If there's even a chance that what he saw is real, we can't just ignore it." Mark didn't have an answer for that. Over the next few days, Ethan became increasingly insistent about sharing his story. "They said I don't have much time," he told his parents one evening. "If people don't start listening soon, it'll be too late." Sarah and Mark finally agreed to let Ethan speak publicly, but only under the condition that they approach it carefully. They reached out to a family friend, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a psychologist who specialized in near-death experiences. Elena had a reputation for being open-minded but grounded in science. When Sarah explained the situation, Elena agreed to meet with Ethan. "Let's start with a private session," she suggested. "If his story holds up, we can decide how to proceed." During their session, Ethan recounted his experience in vivid detail. He described the glowing beings, the catastrophic visions, and the hopeful alternative future with such clarity that Elena found herself captivated. "Ethan," she said gently, "do you feel like these beings chose you for a reason?" Ethan nodded. "They said I'm just the messenger. It's not about me, it's about what people do after they hear what I have to say." Elena leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. She had studied hundreds of near-death experiences over the years, but Ethan's account was unlike anything she had encountered. It wasn't just the level of detail, it was the way he spoke about it, as if he truly believed he had been given a mission. "I believe you, Ethan," she said finally, "and I'm going to help you share your story." With Elena's guidance, the porters arranged for Ethan to speak at a local community center. The turnout was modest at first, just a handful of neighbors and friends curious about what the young boy had to say. But as Ethan began to speak, the room fell silent. He talked about the bright light, the glowing beings, and the terrifying visions of the future. He described the floods, the fires, and the wars with such vivid imagery that some people in the audience began to cry. "It's not too late," Ethan said, his voice trembling with emotion. "They showed me that we can still change things. But we have to start now." By the time he finished, the room was filled with a heavy silence. Then, one by one, people began to applaud. Some approached him afterward, thanking him for his courage. Word spread quickly, and soon, Ethan was invited to speak at other events. As Ethan's story gained attention, it also attracted its share of skeptics. Some dismissed him as a troubled child, while others accused his parents of exploiting him for attention. But Ethan remained focused on his mission. "It doesn't matter if they believe me," he told his parents. "What matters is that they think about what I said." One evening, while preparing for an interview with a local news station, Ethan received a letter in the mail. It was from a woman named Margaret, who claimed to have had a near-death experience similar to his. "When I heard your story, I felt like someone finally understood what I went through," she wrote. "The glowing beings, the visions, it was all the same. I've been too scared to talk about it, but you've given me courage." Ethan showed the letter to Elena, who encouraged him to reach out to Margaret. When they spoke on the phone, Margaret shared her experience in detail, confirming many of the things Ethan had described. "Do you think there are others like us?" she asked. "I think so," Ethan replied. "And maybe it's time we found them?" Inspired by Margaret's story, Ethan and his family launched a website where people could share their near-death experiences anonymously. Within weeks, they received hundreds of submissions from people all over the world. Many described similar encounters with glowing beings and visions of the future. The stories varied in detail, but they all carried the same message. Humanity was at a crossroads, and the choices people made now would determine the fate of the world. Ethan's story eventually caught the attention of a national news outlet, which invited him to appear on a morning talk show. It was his biggest platform yet, and he felt a mix of excitement and nerves as he sat in the brightly lit studio. The host, a kind woman named Laura, smiled reassuringly as she introduced him. "Ethan, you've become quite the phenomenon," Laura began. "Can you tell us, in your own words, what happened to you that day in the woods?" Ethan took a deep breath and began to speak. He told the story with the same conviction he had shown at the community center, his voice steady despite the cameras and bright lights. When he finished, Laura leaned forward, her expression serious. "What do you hope people take away from your story?" she asked. "I hope they realize that it's not too late," Ethan replied. "We can still fix things, but we have to work together. The beings I met, they said it starts with kindness. Helping each other, taking care of the planet, and making better choices. It's not easy, but it's possible." The audience erupted into applause, and Ethan felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, people were starting to listen. In the days following his television appearance, Ethan's life became a whirlwind of activity. His story spread like wildfire across social media, with people from all walks of life debating the authenticity of his experience. Supporters hailed him as a modern-day prophet, while skeptics accused his family of orchestrating a publicity stunt. Despite the polarizing reactions, one thing was clear: Ethan's message was resonating with people. Videos of his speech went viral, sparking conversations about climate change, empathy, and collective responsibility. It seemed like everyone had an opinion, but for Ethan, The mission was simple: get the message out. One evening, as Ethan and his parents sat down for dinner, Mark brought up an unexpected opportunity. "I got a call today from a university," he said, setting down his fork. "They're hosting a conference on near-death experiences and want Ethan to be a keynote speaker." Sarah's eyes widened. "A university? That's incredible, Ethan." Ethan, however, hesitated. "What if they don't believe me?" he asked quietly. "What if they just want to make fun of me?" Mark placed a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. "You've already reached so many people, Ethan. This is just one more chance to share your truth. Whether they believe you or not doesn't matter. What matters is that you tried." The conference was held at a prestigious university known for its research in psychology and the paranormal. The auditorium was packed with academics, students, and curious attendees, all eager to hear from the boy whose story had captured the nation's attention. Ethan's presentation was raw and heartfelt. He spoke about his experience with a maturity far beyond his years, weaving together the lessons he had learned with the visions he had seen. "The beings told me that small acts of kindness can create ripples," he said, his voice steady. "One small change can lead to bigger changes. But it has to start somewhere." When he finished, the room erupted into applause. A few skeptics raised questions during the Q&A session, but Ethan handled them with grace, acknowledging that not everyone would believe him. "I don't have all the answers," he said simply. "I just know what I saw." After the conference, Ethan was approached by a man who introduced himself as Dr. Julian Harper, a renowned neuroscientist. "Your story is extraordinary," Dr. Harper said. "I've studied near-death experiences for decades, and I've never heard anything quite like it. I'd like to collaborate with you, if you're open to it." "What kind of collaboration?" Ethan asked, intrigued. "I want to study your brain activity," Dr. Harper explained. "There's still so much we don't understand about near-death experiences. If we can better understand what happened to you, it might help us learn more about the human mind, and maybe even the universe." Ethan glanced at his parents, who nodded encouragingly. He said, "Let's do it." The study involved a series of non-invasive tests designed to measure brain activity, memory recall, and emotional responses. Dr. Harper was particularly interested in a phenomenon known as the life review, a common feature of near-death experiences where individuals relive pivotal moments from their lives. As Ethan recounted his memories, the scans revealed unusual patterns in his brain activity. "His neural responses are off the charts," Dr. Harper remarked to his team. "It's as if his brain is processing these memories as if they're happening in real time." The findings were groundbreaking, but they also raised new questions. Was Ethan's experience a product of his own mind, or had he truly encountered something beyond human understanding? Dr. Harper was careful not to draw definitive conclusions, but he couldn't deny that Ethan's story was compelling evidence of a deeper mystery. Meanwhile, Ethan's message continued to gain traction. Community leaders began organizing events inspired by his call to action, focusing on environmental sustainability, social justice, and mental health awareness. People shared stories of how Ethan's words had inspired them to make changes in their own lives. One day, Ethan received a letter from a young girl named Mia. She had started a kindness campaign at her school, encouraging students to perform random acts of kindness for one another. "You said small acts can create ripples," Mia wrote. "I just wanted you to know that your ripples have reached me." Ethan read the letter with a smile, feeling a sense of purpose that outweighed the criticism and skepticism he had faced. "It's working," he told his parents. "People are starting to listen." But not everyone was receptive to Ethan's message. A vocal group of skeptics began accusing him of spreading fear and misinformation. Some even claimed his story was a hoax designed to manipulate people. One evening, while scrolling through social media, Ethan came across a particularly harsh comment. "This kid is just a pawn in his parents' scam. Don't fall for it." The words stung, but Sarah reminded him of the impact he was making. "For every person who doubts you, there are 10 more who are inspired by you," she said. "Focus on them, Ethan. They're the ones who matter." Ethan nodded, steeling himself against the negativity. He knew the path he was on wouldn't be easy, but he also knew it was worth it. As months turned into years, Ethan's story became a catalyst for a global movement. His vision of a kinder, more unified world inspired countless individuals and organizations to take action. From planting trees to supporting local charities, people found ways to contribute to the positive change Ethan had described. Ethan himself continued to grow and evolve, balancing his mission with the challenges of being a teenager. He remained grounded, always reminding himself that he was just the messenger. "I don't want people to remember me," he once said during an interview. "I want them to remember the message." A year after his near-death experience, Ethan found himself standing on a global stage. He had been invited to speak at an international summit focusing on climate change and the future of humanity. World leaders, scientists, and activists filled the grand hall, their eyes fixed on the young boy who had captured the world's imagination. Dressed in a simple suit, Ethan stepped up to the podium. Despite the grandeur of the event, he spoke with the same sincerity that had resonated with people from the very beginning. "When I was gone," he began, his voice steady but soft, "I saw a world that had the potential to be beautiful. I saw people working together, helping each other, and taking care of the planet. But I also saw what could happen if we don't act. The choice is ours. The time to act is now." His words were met with a standing ovation. Journalists from across the globe rushed to interview him, eager to capture his insights. Ethan's humility, however, remained unchanged. "I'm not a hero," he told them. "I'm just a kid who got lucky enough to come back." Meanwhile, Dr. Harper continued his research on Ethan's brain activity and the nature of near-death experiences. He published a paper highlighting Ethan's case, which sparked widespread debate in the scientific community. The findings suggested that Ethan's visions might not be entirely subjective, as his brain activity showed patterns consistent with heightened states of consciousness. This could redefine our understanding of the mind and its connection to the universe, Dr. Harper said during an interview. Ethan's experience challenges the boundaries of what we consider possible. Despite the groundbreaking research, skeptics persisted. Critics argued that Ethan's story was a psychological response to trauma, not evidence of a higher truth. But Ethan refused to let the skepticism deter him. "Whether people believe me or not doesn't matter," he said. "What matters is that we try to make the world a better place." Back in his hometown, Ethan's life had changed dramatically. Strangers often approached him, sharing how his story had inspired them to make positive changes in their lives. Local organizations invited him to speak at schools and community events, where he encouraged others to take small steps toward kindness and sustainability. One day, a young boy named Liam approached Ethan after an event. "I've been bullied a lot at school," Liam confessed, his voice trembling. "But when I heard your story, I realized that I can still do good things, even if people don't believe in me." Ethan knelt down to Liam's level, looking him in the eyes. "You're stronger than you think, Liam," he said. "And every good thing you do makes the world a little brighter." As Ethan's influence grew, so did the scale of his initiatives. He partnered with environmental organizations to plant trees and clean up polluted areas. He worked with charities to provide resources for underprivileged communities. His call for kindness and unity began to take tangible form, inspiring countless others to join his mission. But Ethan never lost sight of the simple truths that had guided him since his near-death experience. "It's not about big gestures," he often reminded people. "It's about the little things, smiling at someone, helping a neighbor, or taking care of the planet. Those little things add up." One evening, as Ethan sat on his porch watching the sunset, his father joined him. "You've come a long way, kid," Mark said, placing an arm around Ethan's shoulders. "I'm proud of you." Ethan smiled. "Thanks, Dad. But there's still so much to do." Mark nodded. "And you're the right person to do it." Years later, Ethan's message would continue to echo across the globe. Schools integrated his story into their curriculums, teaching students about the importance of kindness and environmental stewardship. Scientists continued to study his case, exploring the mysteries of consciousness and the potential for human connection. Ethan himself remained humble, dedicating his life to the vision he had seen during those 4 fleeting minutes. Though his experience had been brief, its impact would last for generations, reminding humanity of its capacity for greatness. As the years passed, Ethan's story evolved from a singular, miraculous event into a global movement for change. Documentaries were made about his life and his near-death experience, sparking conversations in academic circles, religious institutions, and among everyday people. His name became synonymous with hope and action, and his simple mantra, "We are all connected," resonated across continents. Ethan used his growing platform to create the 4 Minutes Foundation, named after the amount of time he had spent clinically dead. The foundation's mission was multifaceted, promoting environmental restoration, fostering kindness within communities, and funding research into consciousness and near-death phenomena. The foundation quickly attracted millions of supporters, from world leaders to ordinary citizens. One of the foundation's first major projects was a global tree planting initiative. "The visions I saw showed a world healing itself," Ethan explained during a press conference. "Reforesting our planet is one of the simplest and most impactful steps we can take." The initiative surpassed expectations, with over 1 billion trees planted within the first 5 years. The foundation also established programs aimed at ending hunger and poverty. Ethan believed that kindness began with meeting people's basic needs. He often personally visited communities that benefited from these programs, bringing both supplies and hope. "Seeing Ethan in our village reminded me that someone out there cares," said Maria, a single mother in a small rural town who received aid from the foundation. "He inspired me to believe in a better future." Despite his growing influence, Ethan maintained a down-to-earth perspective. He still attended his small-town high school, balancing his responsibilities as a global figure with the challenges of being a teenager. Teachers often remarked on how grounded he remained, even in the face of overwhelming fame. One of his classmates, Sophie, shared, "Ethan's just Ethan to us. He's still the guy who helps with math homework and makes jokes in class. But we all know he's doing something incredible for the world." Dr. Harper, meanwhile, continued to unravel the mysteries surrounding Ethan's experience. His research expanded into collaborations with neuroscientists, physicists, and spiritual leaders. Together, they developed groundbreaking theories about the nature of consciousness and its connection to the universe. In one particularly stunning revelation, Dr. Harper's team discovered that Ethan's brain waves during his near-death experience displayed patterns unlike any previously recorded. These findings suggested that Ethan's visions might have occurred in a state of heightened awareness, challenging the boundaries of known science. "Ethan's case has opened doors to questions we didn't even know how to ask," Dr. Harper said in an interview. "His story is reshaping our understanding of life and death." Ethan's life wasn't without challenges. Skeptics continued to question his story, accusing him of fabricating his experience for fame. Media outlets often scrutinized his every move, searching for cracks in his narrative. But Ethan faced these challenges with remarkable grace. "Doubt is natural," he said in an interview. "What I saw and felt is real to me, but I don't expect everyone to believe it. All I ask is that we focus on what we can do to make the world better." In his personal life, Ethan began to explore the emotional weight of his experience. While he had returned with a clear sense of purpose, the burden of carrying the world's expectations often felt overwhelming. His parents, Mark and Sarah, provided unwavering support, reminding him to take time for himself. "You're doing incredible things," Sarah told him one evening. "But remember, you're still just a kid. It's okay to take breaks and enjoy your life." Ethan nodded, grateful for the reminder. He found solace in simple moments, walking through the woods, playing soccer with his friends, and spending time with his family. These moments grounded him, allowing him to continue his work with renewed energy. Years later, Ethan stood on the same stage where he had given his first global address. Now in his 20s, he was no longer the boy who had seen the future, but a man who had dedicated his life to making it brighter. "We've come a long way," he told the crowd. "But the journey isn't over. The visions I saw weren't just warnings, they were promises. Promises of what we can achieve if we work together. Let's keep moving forward." As the audience erupted into applause, Ethan smiled. His story had begun with 4 minutes of darkness, but it had grown into a lifetime of light. Ethan's legacy continued to flourish as he grew older, evolving from a figure of inspiration into a catalyst for permanent global change. By his mid-20s, the 4 Minutes Foundation had expanded its influence to nearly every corner of the globe, tackling issues ranging from climate change to social inequality. People from all walks of life credited Ethan's vision for igniting a collective sense of purpose. One of the foundation's groundbreaking achievements was the introduction of the Harmony Project. This initiative focused on uniting different faiths, cultures, and communities to collaborate on shared challenges. It was inspired by Ethan's belief that the division he had seen during his vision of the future could only be healed by fostering understanding and empathy. During one of the Harmony Project's summits, held in Jerusalem, Ethan delivered a speech that would be remembered for generations. When I saw the future, I didn't just see despair. I saw glimpses of hope, of people coming together despite their differences. The truth is, we are stronger when we are united. And it begins with listening to each other. Religious leaders, activists, and politicians in attendance echoed Ethan's sentiments, committing to initiatives that promoted dialogue and peace. The summit concluded with the signing of the Unity Accord, a symbolic commitment by dozens of nations and organizations to work collaboratively on issues of global significance. Back in his hometown, Ethan's small, unassuming house became a symbol of humility. Visitors from around the world, including celebrities, scientists, and politicians, would make pilgrimages to meet him. Yet Ethan always insisted on keeping his roots intact, often refusing invitations to lavish events and award ceremonies. One of his childhood friends, Lucas, shared, "Ethan's humility is what makes him special. Even after everything, he's still the guy who'll drop everything to help you move furniture or fix a leaky faucet." Despite his profound influence, Ethan's life remained grounded in the everyday. He fell in love with a fellow advocate named Mia, who shared his passion for environmental conservation. Their relationship became a testament to the power of partnership, as the two worked side by side to further the foundation's goals. Mia often joked, "Ethan saw the future, and somehow he still wanted to share it with me. That's the real miracle." The couple's wedding was a modest affair, held in a community garden that the foundation had helped to restore. It was attended by close friends, family, and a few world leaders who insisted on sneaking in to witness the union of two people who had done so much for the world. As Ethan's vision continued to inspire action, the world began to see tangible results. Reforested areas that had once been barren deserts teemed with life. Communities that had been plagued by conflict found ways to coexist. And the concept of kindness as currency, introduced by the foundation, became a movement that encouraged people to offer acts of goodwill in exchange for services, fostering a culture of generosity. Dr. Harper, now a renowned expert in consciousness studies, continued to work closely with Ethan. Their research into near-death experiences and the nature of reality led to several groundbreaking discoveries, including new approaches to mental health and emotional well-being. "We've learned so much from Ethan's experience," Dr. Harper said in an interview. "But the most important lesson is that our potential as humans is limitless when guided by compassion." In the latter part of his life, Ethan began to reflect more deeply on the legacy he wanted to leave behind. While he had achieved more than most could dream of, he often wondered if he had done enough to prepare the next generation to carry the torch. During a rare television interview, he shared his thoughts. "My story isn't just about what I saw. It's about what we do with it. The world doesn't need heroes. It needs everyone to realize that they already have the power to make a difference." Ethan spent his final years mentoring young leaders, scientists, and visionaries, ensuring that the foundation's work would continue long after he was gone. When he passed away peacefully at the age of 86, the world mourned not just the loss of a man, but the end of an era. His funeral was attended by millions, held in the same forest where he had first experienced his near-death moment. As people gathered to honor his memory, a message he had written years earlier was read aloud. "I came back to tell you that the future isn't set in stone. It's written by our actions, our choices, and our love for one another. Thank you for listening." Ethan's story became a beacon of hope for future generations. Schools taught his message, scientists built on his discoveries, and communities continued the work he had started. His name became synonymous with unity, kindness, and the belief that even in our darkest moments, we have the power to create light. After Ethan's passing, the world continued to embrace the ideals he had championed. The 4 Minutes Foundation established the Ethan Meyer Institute for Global Unity, a hub for innovation and collaboration on issues ranging from sustainability to interfaith dialogue. The institute attracted some of the brightest minds in the world, all driven by a shared desire to honor Ethan's legacy. One of its flagship programs, the Tomorrow Initiative, focused on empowering young people to take an active role in shaping their communities. Through workshops, mentorship, and funding, the initiative helped launch thousands of projects that tackled issues like climate change, education inequality, and mental health awareness. A young woman named Layla from a war-torn region in the Middle East was one of the program's first success stories. Inspired by Ethan's journey, she founded a grassroots organization that brought clean water and sustainable farming techniques to villages in her country. When she received the Global Peace Award, she credited the foundation for changing her life. Ethan taught us that it only takes a moment to change the course of history, Layla said in her acceptance speech. It's our responsibility to make that moment count. Meanwhile, the concept of kindness as currency spread far beyond the foundation's. Entire towns adopted the model, creating economies based on goodwill and service. Researchers noted significant improvements in mental health and social cohesion in these areas, attributing it to the sense of purpose and community that the model fostered. In one such town, a bakery owner named Carlos shared his experience. I started offering free bread to anyone who needed it, and in return, people started helping me fix up the shop, cleaning the streets, and even teaching my kids math. It's amazing how much we can accomplish when we focus on giving instead of taking. Dr. Harper continued her work on near-death experiences, often reflecting on how Ethan's vision had influenced her career. She published a book titled 4 Minutes to Forever, which became a bestseller and sparked a global conversation about the nature of consciousness and the afterlife. During a lecture at the Ethan Meyer Institute, Dr. Harper spoke about the profound impact of Ethan's story. Ethan's experience reminded us that life is interconnected in ways we can't fully comprehend. Whether you believe in the science, the spirituality, or both, his message remains the same. We are here to make the world better, one moment at a time. The Harmony Project also continued to thrive, with its annual summits drawing leaders from all walks of life. These gatherings became a symbol of hope, where breakthroughs in diplomacy and innovation often began. The Unity Accord, which had been signed during the project's first summit, led to a significant reduction in conflicts and a shift toward global cooperation. One notable example was the resolution of a decades-long territorial dispute in Africa. Inspired by the principles of the Harmony Project, the leaders of the two nations reached an agreement that prioritized the well-being of their citizens over political gain. The settlement included joint development projects and cultural exchange programs that transformed the region. Back at the Institute, Ethan's personal belongings were preserved in a small museum dedicated to his life. Visitors often found themselves moved by the simplicity of his possessions: a worn journal filled with notes about his vision, a pair of hiking boots he wore during his childhood adventures, and the tree ring he had carved during his recovery. One visitor, a teenager named Mia, left a note in the museum's guest book. I came here feeling lost, but now I understand what I need to do. Thank you, Ethan, for reminding us that even the smallest acts of kindness can ripple into something extraordinary. As the world entered a new era of peace and innovation, Ethan's legacy remained a guiding light. His story was passed down from generation to generation, not as a tale of supernatural visions, but as a reminder of what humanity can achieve when united by love, courage, and purpose. Years passed, but Ethan Meyer's story continued to inspire people across the globe. His legacy wasn't confined to books, museums, or speeches. It was alive in the actions of those who believed in his message. Communities across continents planted trees, built schools, and shared resources, all in the spirit of the harmony Ethan had envisioned. One of the most enduring symbols of his impact was the Ethan Meyer Tree of Life Initiative, a worldwide effort to combat deforestation and promote environmental stewardship. To date, the initiative had planted over 1 billion trees, transforming barren landscapes into lush forests and providing habitats for countless species. Families, schools, and companies participated, each planting trees as a tribute to Ethan's 4 minutes of enlightenment. At the heart of the Harmony Project stood a towering oak tree, grown from a seed Ethan had carried in his pocket during his recovery. Visitors often gathered beneath its sprawling branches to reflect, meditate, or simply feel connected to something greater than themselves. The tree became known as the Unity Oak, a living testament to the interconnectedness Ethan had described. One particularly moving moment occurred when a young girl approached the tree with her grandmother. She placed her hands on its trunk and whispered, "Thank you, Ethan. I'll make the world better, just like you did." Her grandmother, holding back tears, explained that the girl had been named after Ethan as a symbol of hope for their family. Meanwhile, Dr. Harper's research had reached new heights. Her team made groundbreaking discoveries about the brain and consciousness, advancing the fields of neuroscience and spirituality. She often collaborated with leaders from diverse disciplines, uniting scientists, theologians, and artists in their quest to understand the mysteries of existence. During a live-streamed symposium, Dr. Harper addressed a question about the lasting impact of Ethan's experience. "Ethan's message transcends time," she said. "It's not about where we go after we die, it's about what we do while we're alive." He taught us that even in our darkest moments, we have the power to create light for others. The 4 Minutes Foundation also grew into a global movement, fostering innovation and collaboration on an unprecedented scale. Its programs ranged from disaster relief to arts education, each designed to empower individuals and communities. One of its flagship projects, the Ripple Effect Challenge, encouraged people to perform acts of kindness and share their stories, creating a domino effect of positivity. A teenager named Sam shared his experience through the challenge. After hearing about Ethan's vision, Sam organized a community cleanup in his struggling neighborhood. The event inspired local businesses to invest in the area, leading to new jobs, a youth center, and a renewed sense of pride. "When I started, I thought I was just picking up trash," Sam said during a Ripple Effect summit. "But I realized I was planting seeds of hope, just like Ethan did." Ethan's story also inspired a resurgence in storytelling itself. Films, novels, and plays were created in his honor, each exploring the themes of unity, courage, and redemption. His life became a beacon for creatives seeking to inspire audiences and spark meaningful conversations. One critically acclaimed film, 4 Minutes to Forever, depicted Ethan's journey with stunning visuals and heartfelt performances. Audiences around the world were moved to tears, and the film became a cultural phenomenon, winning awards and breaking box office records. Its tagline, "One moment can change the world," became a rallying cry for those seeking to make a difference. As humanity continued to evolve, Ethan's vision of unity and purpose remained a cornerstone of progress. His story reminded people that even the smallest actions could create ripples of change, shaping a future built on compassion and cooperation. And though Ethan was no longer physically present, his spirit lived on in every act of kindness, every spark of innovation, and every step toward a brighter tomorrow. The world had embraced his message, proving that the greatest legacies are those that empower others to carry the torch forward.